So I'm going to talk you through the process of editing a photo for submission to a magazine. This one got printed in Wavelength magazine, it's UK Surf mag. So I had to choose the shot that I wanted to submit. I sent in a couple from this session, but let's focus on what I think is the best one. This is the sequence, so from here to here is the wave that I was interested in. I went through, you can see, if I double click, you can see this one's pretty, wow, it's got a huge blob of water there, still there. It's kind of going away a bit. Okay, so the water's kind of drained off. I quite like this one, you can see the house there. This one's okay. That's the one I thought worked out quite best in the end. I like just this, the shape of the wave. It's kind of inside the barrel more than the previous shot. That one I think is less good because you can't see what's going on over here. So let's see what this looked like before I processed it in Lightroom. I've obviously flagged it and I've given it a bunch of stars just so I can find it again more easily. So we're in the library module at the moment. So there's your thumbnails, there's your main image, and I go to develop. This is where all the magic happens, where you can adjust everything there. So the first thing I'm going to do is reset, and that takes you back to, that's how it came out of the camera, basically. So if I undo, that's what it's going to look like in the end, and that's what it looked like straight away. So it's quite flat. You can see it's an ARW file, that's the raw format that my Sony A600 shoots in, sorry, A6000 shoots in. So naturally there's a few things I needed to do here. So what do? If you don't have a nice bunch of presets like I've got here, and I'll show you what happens with those later, to start with, then one thing you can do first of all is just hit auto, and that's gonna, well in this case it's kind of washed it out even more, so it's just brighten things up. Sometimes that'll do a really good job if you're lucky, but in this case it hasn't. So let's see what I do normally. If I go, I think that's obviously going to need a bit more contrast. What you don't want to do, if you click on it you can zoom in, what you don't want to do is lose all the detail in the dark areas like this wetsuit. So let's zoom out for a minute. I'm going to try and get it to roughly what I do. Add a bit of clarity. Clarity is cool, it's like sharpening, but it's quite selective. And then a bit more vibrance, which is like saturation, but kind of selective. It's alright. It's gone a bit bluey. So the white balance is one of the important things. You can hit auto. That pulls it to what it thinks it should be, rather than as shot. You can go for the different presets as well. Cloudy is pretty accurate for this day, and that probably gives you a fairly accurate representation of what it was like. So you can tweak it a little bit. I like to tweak it a bit normally. I don't know, let's just see. That's cloudy, that's auto. I like the auto in this case, so I'm going to leave that where it is. Highlights, for surfing, I normally drag the highlights down quite a bit because you find there's a lot of white water, and there's also, to get any sort of texture in this white water, you're going to have to pull the highlights back down. As you move this highlights thing, watch the histogram up here and see which bits move. There you go, look. That's the whites, that's highlights, exposure, shadows, blacks. So that lets you know what you're moving. You can drag it around here as well. So whites, a little tip, you can press the Alt button and drag this, and it will show you when it starts blowing out. And if you move it to about there, that's everything except, well, that's all the whites, kind of where they should be. You can do the same with blacks. You can see where you start losing any detail in the blacks when you hold down Alt. I'll give that a go, but I kind of prefer it like that. I want a bit of colour in the sky. And then I might boost the shadows a bit, so his face, you can kind of see his face coming out. You don't want it to look too unnatural. It's almost like fake fill flash. If you imagine I just shot a flash in the tube, then you'd have been able to see him a lot better, but that kind of makes up for that. So we're already looking a lot better than that, which was the original. In fact, I'm pretty happy with that as it is. What I would do though is go down, if you zoom in here, you can see there's a bit of noise here, but it's like colour noise, and I find that the noise reduction, the colour one, actually works really well. If you see, so let's go back. So you see this little patch of red here, and there's like a bluey bit here. If you do noise reduction on the colour, it'll get rid of that. Not going to show up, especially not in the size it was printed, but makes me feel better because he's definitely got a black wetsuit on. There isn't any bits of red on it. You can do some noise reduction in general, but it just looks like a oil painting or something when you do that. I really don't like it. So I prefer to just have a normal amount. Let's say about 10, that'll do. I don't want to put a vignette on it because I like the edges as they are. I think that your eye is drawn to him kind of naturally with this kind of diagonal line coming up from the bottom left, and obviously coming around here, your eye is drawn to the human figure in the first place. Anyway, he's obviously quite a lot darker than the surroundings, so he stands out a lot. I don't need to do any sort of darkening or lightening of the edges in order to draw your eye into the subject, which is the surfer in this case. Definitely not going to add any grain. I don't need that. Noise reduction. These sliders are really really interesting with surf photos because normally it's the aqua and the blue, well, green aqua blue that you find will make a drastic difference. In this case, it's going to be more of this kind of range here. But I can show you what kind of difference it makes. That one looks pretty unnatural when you go all that way. You can really give it a different feel just by tweaking these, and there you go, look. So you've got like, that's a bit full on. I mean, obviously I wouldn't suggest, it's just a different look. If you double click on them, it resets them back to 0. So I actually, what do I want to do? I don't think I want to make it browner, perhaps a touch kind of greener on the yellows, maybe a little tiny bit, just to make it stand out a bit. And this is kind of playing on the sunset vibe. If I make that one a bit orangey, you can see more of a transition from this kind of now slightly more greeny yellow into an orangey orange. Kind of makes it a bit more sunsetty. I don't know though, because it almost looks fake now, this kind of transition here, this gradient between the two. So, let's leave it. So that's the main thing. Go for your white balance, or hit auto and you see if you can get the exposure about right. Keep an eye on your histogram. So as you can see, I've changed quite a bit here. Crank up the clarity a bit. If you crank it up too much, then you'll see this weird like fringing around the contrasty areas. So you definitely don't want that. Just Control Z back. So you can see a tiny bit there, but I'm happy with that because it does bring out the texture in the wave and his reflection here as well quite a lot more. Vibrance is pretty good. I'm on a bit of a high vibrance kick at the moment with my post-processing, so I like it the way that looks there. So I think that's pretty good. So again, this is where it started. Pretty lackluster. Got a lot of potential though, you can see. And because it's a raw file, there's a lot of information there that can be pulled out. So there's your histogram. And then if I Control Z, that's what it looks like now. Pretty different, pretty dramatic change. And that's very close to what I submitted to Wavelength for the magazine and what ended up being published. So one of the great things in Lightroom is I can hit create new preset. I've already got a folder called LSP, Learning Surf Photography Presets. I've also got one for GoPro presets as well. This one I'll call it I'll call it LSP Demo Backlit Tube. And these are all the things I want to do. I didn't use any of those, so that's no worries. Yeah, let's create all of that. Right, create. And where is it? LSP Demo Backlit Tube. That's now my preset. So if I was to go, say, let's find one from that same session that I haven't processed yet. Let's try this one. So it's an alright shot. I'd probably crop it. That one might work on Instagram if you cropped it square, so let's try that. I'll go, here's your crop tool, 1:1, so Instagram square. I like leaving a little bit of sky there. I think that looks pretty good. Fill the frame with something interesting. Maybe I'll bring that down a bit. Maybe I want a bit more of an angle actually. Something like that might work. So now if I want to apply that same preset to this, I just go over here, click on it, and there we go. That one's obviously a bit brighter. I quite like it though. So I'm going to leave that as it is. I will export that now and I will stick that on Instagram. So you have a look on the Learning Surf Photography feed and you'll see that one. And if you head to learningsurfphotography.com/Lightroom, you can read all about this post on the site. And you'll be able to download the preset that I've just made, LSP demo backlit tube. I'll export that from Lightroom now. You'll be able to download it to apply it to your photos. And you can see how easy it is to use something like Lightroom to produce quite good results in not much time at all. And then you can apply them to other photos from the same session. That's pretty much it. That's my whole process from start to finish.